hot topics here. Anything that's kind of changed in any of the league rules. I don't obviously follow baseball as much, but I know
I was watching
talking to a friend yesterday, and he brought it up that there's these new changes that the only one I overheard was the clock.
Huge
the
difference.
Clock was the only
30 minutes. They get shaved off 35 minutes, 30 minutes per game.
So how long was it before?
So previously, they did the average. It was about 3 hours and 10 minutes, give or take.
Yeah.
And now this, yesterday with opening day, they averaged about 2 hours and about 40 minutes per game. Some games were quicker even.
Yeah.
And some games went longer too, right, with extra innings or high-scoring affairs. But for the most part, there wasn't too many violations. The first one went to Stroman, of course. But other than that, there was some calls here and there. But for the most part, people loved it. I mean, taking off 30, and it's not the gameplay that they're actually losing. It's just the extra bullshit you spend. They did a side-by-side comparison of like a game from last year and a game from this year. By the time they got in 5 pitches for the game this year, they'd only got to pitch number 2 for the game last year.
It's crazy.
So it makes such a difference. Like if you're a fan watching the game, right? Like people have been complaining about years that baseball's not fun to watch anymore. There's too much dead time. The lack of excitement's gone, right? Yeah. So it's nice to see, like, we personally play baseball too, right? So we know how fun it can be when there's action, though.
Yeah.
There's just guys hitting bombs or strikeouts. It's great for the stats or whatever, but it's not actually fun for someone in this, you're taking care of your kids or something to the game, and it's just nothing going on the whole time, right?
Yeah, so I think that's one thing we always talk about baseball, and then it being too slow to watch, but fun to play because you're, like, in there. Like, obviously, if you're the person playing in these national baseball games, you're obviously having fun yourself. You're out there in the field, you're doing something. The fans, you're just sitting there and hoping for excitement. And obviously baseball, that's just the kind of sport it is. You're just relying on one guy to hit the ball. The ball only moves so much. So obviously, hopefully this does kind of get more people kind of interested in it, just for the benefit of not, like, how long was the game before in total? Can't even remember.
The thing is, baseball, like, unless, to be honest, I watch more Blue Jays than anything else, right? They did fantastic. They held on, but they got the win. But just in general, baseball has become a slower sport to watch. So if you're the average fan watching a game right now, you're not going to watch something that's over 3 hours with that limited amount of action, right? Especially kids today, with their screen time and everything else, you're not going to be able to keep their attention and focus for 3+ hours, right? And even like sports like basketball, NHL, they average about 2.5 hours for a game right now. There's a lot of back and forth, especially with basketball that we have on right now, and hockey and such as well. And even football, like everyone, there's not as much game play, but there's still more action and to talk about, and there's so many other things that make the sport so much more enjoyable to watch, right? And baseball, when there's nothing going on in baseball, there is nothing going on in baseball. There's just guys taking, the hitter calls a timeout. Cool. Yeah. Pitcher calls a timeout. Cool. Pitcher tries to, catch the guy on first or second. Okay, now you restart the thing again. By the time you get one pitch off, it's already been like over a minute of absolutely nothing going on, right? So if you're in the stand on a hot summer day and you've taken your kids out and the whole family's out there, how boring is that to watch? Yeah. Right? Like, that's true. So I think it's great to see. I know there's some other changes where they got the shift or banning the shift in some way and some other rules, but I think the biggest one that I've definitely seen, the most obvious one that made a difference, is the shortened game times.
Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so that's at least one of the biggest changes I think we've seen so far. There hasn't been too many in any of the other sports as of right now. Let's go down to just, again, we'll just kind of touch up again on the playoffs for NBA, just because they are in a pretty, fight or flight mode for most of these teams right now to get into that play-in. And looking at both sides, obviously there's a lot of teams that are fighting to just get that last spot, that 10th spot. That's going to be a big fight right now. And you can see on East and West.
East and West. I mean, who would have thought that Chicago and Washington fighting for who gets their ass kicked in the play-in.
Chicago, I kind of like.
Chicago's got no other choice.
I was expecting a little more of them to actually make somewhere in the playoffs. But Washington, they weren't even a thought in my mind of being a team that was gonna run it deep. And now something's up with Beal. It was a quick glance.
With something with a fan, right? That
Yeah,
he reacted and they're investigating right now.
Yeah.
But I mean, there hasn't been too much. I don't think there's any physical confrontation as far as any punches are thrown. I think it was just some stuff said back and forth. The fan apparently said that Beal cost him a bet. Beal's like, I don't play for you.
Straight up, which is the honest truth. Like
he
a
does
player,
it.
yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of players have kind of gotten upset at fans saying shit about like, hey, oh, you fucked me in fantasy, or you did this to me on this thing, but they're going to play to what they're going to play to, and every day and every game is going to be different. We're just expecting the most out of a player each fucking game.
Well, now, though, with all the new betting rules and things, you can bet on so much more, right? You're definitely seeing more fans get upset with players after losing games, after teams losing games, right?
Yeah.
Even in, like, fan situations, there's been a lot more instances of guys getting into it with fans, like Draymond, the Russells, right? They're all... And I mean, that's justified. It's not like they're complaining or whining. The fans are saying some shit they shouldn't be said. So I get it. But just going back to Beal and the Wizards and everything else, I mean, do you really want to play for the 10th seed? Like, just to lose to Milwaukee or the Celtics in the first round? Mm-hmm. If I was them, I would just go for a tank right now. No offense. But they got nothing to play for. I mean, same thing with the, what do you call it? The Portland Trail Blazers.
Yeah.
You got Damian Lillard having one of the best seasons of his life, if not the best season. Yeah. The team's like 32 wins. Like, I feel bad for both teams in a way that they should have traded Beal and Lillard. Not saying that Beal's as good as Lillard, but the contracts and the situations are similar. Played for one franchise all their years. They've had great years, and then they got signed to contracts that are now making it hard. I mean, I can see Lillard having more value. But in a few years, you're going to be paying this guy like $60 million for someone in his mid-30s. So that's a risk on its own right now.
No, you're right. It kind of sucks for him right now just because he's actually still one of my favorite players. And when him and Beal were obviously playing together, that was a totally different team.
Beal and him played together?
Oh, no, not him.
Wall? You're talking about John Wall?
Not even John Wall. Who was it? Him and
CJ?
Yeah,
CJ. Yeah.
When they were together, that was like when Portland, was at their prime. They're, going toe to toe with Golden State at times, and then McCollum leaves, and a few other things kind of just fall apart.
I mean, I agree with the trade. I think it was a good trade for what they were doing. But the problem is that's 2 years in a row you've wasted Lillard's career, right? Yeah. So, and apparently he's not the guy who's going to be asking out, or that's not what he plays for. But at the same time, he's done everything in his power to be the best player. I don't think the organization has done the same on their part.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, they got some trade assets if they want to trade Anthony Simmons. Maybe they got a high draft pick here, but they need other guys to step up. Nurkic has been garbage for them, really, for what he's getting paid right now. Not the same since he had his leg injury a few years back. So, but they got some good young players. It just doesn't work with Damian's timeline. I mean, if they get someone else, like, what do you call it? The Wembanyama, I always mess up his name. Wemby. Let's just go with Wemby here. Right? Dude, he's like those 2K players. He's like 7'6", got like a 10-foot wingspan, but he's like Durant in a way that he can score from anywhere, but he's a big guy at the same time.
Yeah.
So other than injuries to those kind of players, like leg and lower body injuries, we'll see what happens. Apparently, he's he's the best prospect since LeBron James.
Wow, and a totally different looking player
he's
too,
a freak,
which is crazy.
He's a freak.
Yeah, he's a scary-looking guy because he's going to be able to do damage all over the court.
Exactly. Like, he's literally, you can put him anywhere on the court and he's capable of scoring on you, right? So, but like that, that's what I'm saying, going back to the Wizards and the Bulls. Why are you fighting for the 10th seed overall when you could rather be having a chance to get Wemby?
Yeah.
I mean, Damian Lillard and Wemby right there, that could possibly bring Portland back to the playoffs.
True.
You want Beal and Wemby, but we'll see. I don't know. Washington's never really had good luck, but
not on picks.
Picks though. And the guys they've drafted like pretty terribly.
Yep.
They traded away Roy Hachimura for, I think it was some seconds and a player here or there, but you've got all these picks over the years and they haven't done. Who have they actually had that's been drafted that's become an all-star? The amount of wasted picks that team has had is just ridiculous.
I can't even think of a single person.
Every top 10 pick they've had, I swear, in the last few years, it just turned out to be trash. I don't see, like, they got Porzingis, but again, Porzingis is not necessarily a younger guy as he used to be.
No.
And you're gonna pay him big money too.
Yeah.
But is he really you're really gonna lock in on a core of like Bradley Beal and Porzingis right now, and you got Kuzma becoming a free agent? He's gonna opt out of his contract at the same time. So I don't know. If I was Washington, I would just tank and see what happens, because you're probably going to win the same amount of playoff games being the 8th seed.
Yeah.
If you end up getting all the way there, then you would be not making the playoffs at all.
Yep.
So we'll see. We'll see what happens, man. All these some teams are smart. Some teams have been doing it all year, but then you got teams like the Hornets that are beating up on the Dallas Mavericks.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens, man. Dallas right there too.
That's exactly where my next kind of point was going to be, is who out of these teams that we're looking at is actually going to fall out. You know, Dallas is right there at that borderline. You just brought up, obviously, Washington's kind of seems like they're trying to, get that 10th spot from Chicago.
I think the Mavericks have the most to lose this year. Yeah. If Luka's already frustrated, I know he's got some things going off the court with him as well. He alluded to some personal issues, but on the court he hasn't been as happy. He got technical. He's already. Well, the league rescinded the technical.
He got lucky, yeah.
He got very lucky. I think it's the second time that this happened in the last little bit here. So, and then with Kyrie as well, Kyrie hasn't been the issue at all. No. But at the same time, what Kyrie offers that team isn't what they necessarily needed, right? Yeah. They need someone other than Luka who could score and play defense. But they just don't have it. Ever since they gave up Dorian Finney-Smith and haven't been able to rebound. Yep. Luka has not given any shits on defense. No. The guy's body language is horrible. Yeah. But he's still putting up like 39 and 6 a game, right? So
for some reason, he looks like every year he's getting chubbier.
His fitness level
is hard to look at him from when he first came in the league as like a rookie to what he is right now. Like, he seems like maybe he was trying to bulk up, and now he just kind of really bulked up.
He's just, I know he's been playing for a while because he played with his, Slovenia in like the Euros and stuff like that this offseason. But yeah, he's at a point in his career where I think he needs to realize that he can be a better player than what he already is. He's not as good an off-ball player, right? Yep. He's a good shooter, but when he's playing off the ball, that doesn't quite connect as much. And he takes a lot of threes, which is fantastic. He needs to be a little bit more efficient when it comes to that. And this is just nitpicking at Luka at the end of the day, right? But he definitely needs to become a better off-ball player.
Yep.
His defense is one thing that you could say is always going. He's never going to be like an all-star defensive player. So let's get that fact straight. But when you saw what he was doing last year when they made it to the Western Conference Finals, he gave a shit on defense. He tried on defense. He's guarding guys. He's giving effort. That's all you can ask out of Luka. He's a big boy at the end of the day. Guy's like 6'7", right? So he's at a guy who's 6'7". He should be able to defend better than what he has been. So if he can play better defense and improve off the ball, he's going to open up so much more for the rest of his teammates and the players that they're trying to bring in. But that's the second point I was going to talk about. Dallas is who can they even bring in right now? They don't have enough space to get a max guy.
No.
And they've had such a talent drain and giving up picks. And each time they've given up a trade, they've gotten a little worse.
Yeah.
A little worse. Then you give up, what do you call it, Jalen Brunson. Absolutely bungled that trade. They had him, he would have signed a contract. They didn't offer him to him when he wanted it. And then when they did offer it to him, he's like, fuck that, I'm not taking that. He ended up making, what, $100 million, doubled his contract. They offered him 4 years. If they had offered him like the 4 years and $56 million that he had originally wanted, they could have had him for that. And now they lost him. They lost Dinwiddie. They lost Dorian Finney-Smith. And that's great. You got Kyrie, but Kyrie only gives you so much. He's a great offensive player. He's not going to give you anything on defense to make your team better.
And he's not going to play like a high percentage games. Like, if you're obviously looking for a guy that might have to play on days that your star player like Luka's out, he's out half those games too. So it's been a weird little bit because they've both been out. Luka's out and Irving's playing, or Irving's out and Luka's playing. So it's kind of in this weird. The chemistry is obviously not there right away either, just because they haven't got enough time. It's kind of, how they put Durant, in Brooklyn. They had Durant, Irving, and Harden. But did they have how many games in total did they play with each other? It was such a low number. So even when they did, they weren't like a threat really because they just didn't have that chemistry. You never knew who was going to shoot, who was going to do what.
They just had a stat the other day with Brooklyn regarding that point. I think it was Mikal Bridges, Cameron Johnson, and one other guy. I can't remember the exact name, but anyways, those three have played more games together than Kyrie, Durant, and Harden did. So since the trade deadline up until now, those games, they have had more games combined with that threesome than Harden, Durant, and Irving. And look how long those guys had to play together.
Yeah.
Even though I know Harden, they got a little bit later on, but that just shows you, man. The fact that those guys don't play enough games is always going to be a question mark.
It is.
And we'll see. We'll see what happens with Dallas. I mean, they got a lot on the line. And to be honest, if Luka's this unhappy, he seems like the next all-star trade target.
Yeah.
If you're wanting a guy who's unhappy, I mean, unfortunately, Dallas got that. Dallas fortunately got the title with Dirk, but they've had issues being able to keep players over the past few years and sign free agents and things like that. So we'll see what happens. I think that they got a lot to lose, and they need to make the playoffs and even do something in the playoffs on top of that. So
I remember when they brought in Porzingis, thinking that was going to be the game changer.
I mean, and he's a good player.
He's
but the assets they gave up for him and the way that he was used in Dallas is not to his optimal strength either, right? So, and that's the thing with Luka. He wants the ball in his hands and he does so many great things. But as a team, you need guys who can touch the ball, and the more they touch the ball, the more they're able to make passes, the more involved they are in the offense, the more they're going to give a shit all around.
Yeah.
And as ball dominant as Luka is, I think he needs to find a way to be effective off the ball in order to make his teammates better in that respect.
Yep.
And I know he's always going to be able to have pick and roll. He'll always be able to put up his points, and he'll get his rebounds, he'll get his assists. But if he can just become a better off-ball player and give a little bit more shit on defense, he still can be an even better player than what he is. And he's fucking fantastic the way he is. So I'm still going to keep my Luka stock. I know it's taking a little bit of a dip here, but I'm still going to hold on to that stock for a little bit.
That's true. So next up, we can hit up basically another team that's obviously been fighting pretty tough to the Los Angeles Clippers. Now losing Paul George and Kawhi Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
They're relying on the one guy that has been passed around the league that everybody's calling stat patter.
Yep.
But
triple-double.
Freaking carried them through at least one big game against a team that's also freaking trying to fight for a playoff spot right now. And actually would have tied them. I think it was against Minnesota that game, right?
The recent one, right?
Yeah, because I think Minnesota won that. They'd both be at 40-40 right now.
I think they played Memphis recently. They beat Memphis, right? They played Memphis the other day, and they beat them like 141 to 132, I believe was the number. And that was crazy. Like Westbrook led the team in points and assists that day.
And 100% on 3 points made. 5 for 5.
We went 5 for 5.
That's all I remember seeing the first stat that came out. 5 for 5 on a 3-pointer. I was just shocked that he even took 5.
Wow. Wow. I mean, you know what? He's done his part. He's definitely made, the right plays. He's gotten better. The only thing is he's a ball dominant player.
Yes. Yeah.
So we'll see what happens. When's Paul George supposed to come back?
Shit, I did not. I didn't even honestly know he was out until I saw the article on what happened with Russell Westbrook going off, and I was like, okay, that makes sense.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, he's a pretty important player, and it seems like they were starting to get on a little bit of a roll.
Yep.
So, if you look at the standings right now? They're 5th place, right? They're 4th is Phoenix and 6th is Golden State. I think there's about 2 games separating all the teams. I think, and I've seen these Clippers do it before, I think they're going to start resting guys, air quotations here for all the people who can't see.
Yeah.
Because they did that a few years ago, remember? They wanted to avoid the Lakers.
Yeah.
And they wanted to get Luka and the Mavericks instead, and Luka almost beat them by... Took him, I think, Game 7 that time, and he had an unbelievable series. So I wonder if this year they're going to try to pull something similar because if you're 3rd, You're playing one of the worst defenses, but one of the best offenses in the league in Sacramento. Or you're playing the Phoenix Suns with Durant, Booker, CP3, Ayton, and whatever the flavor of the day is for the fifth player in that rotation. Personally, I'm taking the Sacramento Kings. No experience. Defense is horrible. I know they're great on offense, but you need to be able to play defense once the playoffs come. And their record against teams that are above 500 is 21-24. So they're a below 500 team against the good teams. So they're taking care of business against the teams that are good. But the teams that are the teams that are poor, they've done a good job against. But the teams that have been really good, below 500. So you come in a playoff series against hopefully a healthy Paul George, Kawhi, and you got Russell and Zubac and all these guys. We'll see what happens, man. If I'm I'm just letting you know, I think the Clippers are going to pull a little bit of a tank here to try to play the Kings.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, so they would just basically have to swap with Golden State to just take over that 6th spot, which is a 1 game away.
Yep.
I think they play each other soon too, but
the Lakers play them I think next week.
Oh yeah,
so that's going to be able to see if who's all playing when it comes down to it. But they've got and then on top of that, the Clippers have some big games coming up. They end up with Phoenix to finish their season.
That could be huge for how you're just saying their playoff positioning in that last game.
Well, they played Memphis the other day. They're going to play Memphis again tonight.
Wow.
Right? Then they play the Pelicans tomorrow on a back-to-back. Guaranteed they're going to be resting one of those 2 days for sure. Then they play the Lakers. Huge game, a Battle of LA, baby.
Yeah.
And then Portland, the tanking Blazers, so that's not an issue at all. And then you have Phoenix at the end of the season on a back-to-back. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens with the Clippers, man.
All right, looking at just kind of both the conferences and what's been going on, who do you think is going to be this year's MVP?
I will say, I will give it to Embiid.
Embiid?
Right, but if Jokic wins again, I'm not going to be surprised. If Embiid wins, I'm not going to be surprised either. I still think Giannis has a shot, but he's looking like the 3rd guy right now, just with all the way that everything's been happening the last little bit. So I think it comes down to Embiid and Jokic. Yeah. But I would give it to Embiid right now. But it's still crazy. Like with 4 or 5 games left, one guy goes on a crazy streak or something like that. It could sway people into going the other way, right? So
for me right now, I think it's been Giannis and Embiid, just because I was like looking at who are the top 5 in each of the stat leaders.
No love for Jokic, eh?
No love, just because I was looking at, okay, well, who's done shit this year on overall stats, not just like the guy that's out there scoring and whatnot. So Giannis was on, points. He's one of the top 5 guys.
Yeah.
On rebounds, he's one of the top 5 guys.
Right.
Defensively, he's been one of the top 10 guys. I wouldn't say 5. There's a couple guys. Embiid, even Jokic has done his kind of part in there too. But I've just seen Giannis doing a lot. And then even though they lost to that game in Boston where Tatum went off.
They played on back-to-back.
And back-to-back. Right? It was just Giannis was like, when you watched his game, I was just watching the highlights and what he was trying to do to beat Boston there.
Yeah.
Even though you could tell he's a little gassed out in that game. He was trying his best, trying his hardest to beat basically one guy on Boston that was just nonstop scoring. He'd go anywhere he wanted. Then you got Jaylen Brown, who's, rocking it since he's put that mask on his face. So it's like just watching the style of play, how you're saying that it could just take one guy at the end of the season to go on a tear. Basically, that's where it's at. I would say it's Embiid to me, Giannis, and then Jokic is like Jokic. I don't even honestly know how to pronounce his name. Jokic. He's right there on the 3rd spot right now. And then literally any of them could pass each other, but Embiid and Giannis, I think, are at that rabbit in hair.
I would give it
just jump in.
I think it's Jokic. I think it's Embiid, Jokic, and then a little bit more of a gap between number 3 and Giannis. No offense to Giannis. Giannis is so fucking good.
Yeah.
But I just don't think he has been in the number 1 or 2 MVP discussion. He's just been so good all year, right?
Yeah.
So I think it comes down to Embiid and Jokic, depending on how they finish the season. So we'll see what happens. But that's been one of the probably hotly contested debates all year over those 2 guys, and it's gotten pretty ugly at times too. The thing with Jokic that I think people punish him for is that same thing that the ways that they punish LeBron too is that they compared him to Michael Jordan, for example, LeBron, and said he's not the same scorer. Well, he's probably going to be one of the greatest, if not, he is the greatest scorer of all time, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day. Yeah. I think Jokic, because he doesn't score the same way that these other guys do, people think that he doesn't do as much.
Yeah.
He is the best passing center of all time.
Yeah.
The best passing center of all time. Think about that. And Giannis and Embiid are generational players too. But I think Jokic does a lot for that team. Again, I think you're right about the defensive part. He's not the same player that Embiid or Giannis is, which you should take into consideration when it comes to MVP. But I think Jokic sometimes doesn't get enough respect because he isn't the same scorer. He still scores.
Yep.
He's much more efficient than either of them. But he's one of the best passers, and he does so much for his team that it's just such a huge difference. So
Jokic, I was just looking at kind of games played too. So he's already played more games than
he's available. He's always playing, right?
He's
so that counts.
Available.
If you're gonna count that into the MVP voting, he's definitely been a more durable player.
Yeah.
So when you see a guy doing so well on a game-to-game basis, you sometimes lose sight of the fact of how good of that player really is.
Yep.
You know, the same thing every single day, the consistency. Jokic is always playing no matter what.
Whereas sometimes per game, he's a leader compared to these guys. These guys are all at the 1 point, basically one steal a game per game, and he's at 1.7 per game.
He's got great hands, right?
Yeah,
and he's now using it on defense. He's not going to be the same defensive player that a guy of Giannis or Embiid, where they're able to cover so much ground. So sometimes Jokic is going to get beat on those pick and rolls. That's just the way it is, right? But he does a lot more defensively now than he used to. And he's such a great offensive talent that he's able to... He gives a shit on defense. That's it. You know, we were talking about Luka earlier. Yeah, he's going to get beat, but if a guy actually gives a shit on defense despite his limitations, that's all you can ask for at that point. And they built a really good roster around him. They've added players that are able to cut off of him, play good defense. So it's made him a better player in that respect too, and he's made them better players.
True.
So we'll see. I mean, the thing with the West and Jokic and all this, we'll see what it comes in the playoffs. But I think it's one of those years where Jokic, in my opinion, needs to take his team to at least the semifinals.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
And I know he's done it before, but the way the West is set up this year, he's got a team that should be able to make the Western Conference Finals.
Yep, 100%. That's actually kind of one of the things I think I just noted down to maybe discuss was obviously who's going to, in the playoffs right now, who's going to be winning each of those stages. So obviously you just basically hit it on the head there that, you know, he's going to have to almost surpass every stage there. Try to get into that conference final.
I think that if you say, you know, they made it to the semifinals, they beat two other good teams to get there, right? And I mean, if they play, I don't know who's going to be that matchup because the West has been just topsy-turvy all year, right? Yeah. You know, you wake up in the morning, you got a feeling about a certain team. You wake up the next day and they blew a 20-point lead.
Yeah.
So I think this is the year, and they're by far a better team than a lot of the other ones out there. They've been healthy for the most part. I know Murray's kind of been a little bit iffy, but he seems to get his groove back a little bit. So we'll see what happens. I think Porter's going to be their X factor. If he's able to give them, because he's another guy, and Murray as well, but their defensive play is not always the best. Yeah. And when it comes to the playoffs, you need to be able to at least be a better defensive team than what Denver's shown this year. So we'll see. Denver's got a lot riding on it as well. So I think Jokic has the ability to take him there. He's going to need some help. But Jokic is going to have to do some heavy lifting to get the team to where they want to be.
Yeah, and I think even the next part, who's going to have the most to gain or lose or anything from making or not making the playoffs. And we obviously talked about Washington being at that 11th spot, not really needing to jump into 10th because just the way the team is right now, it's not the best chance for you to go for winning it all right now. So losing at any point of the playoffs would not be beneficial because then you're just giving away that chance to get a really good top pick.
Right. So we'll see what happens with those guys too. They're, to be honest, I would rather, Chicago's too stubborn to tank, but I mean, good for them that they're still hanging around in the same way, but especially some years it's worth it, but I feel like this year, whoever's going to end up playing the first, even if you're a 6 seed this year, depending on who the matchup is, right?
Yeah.
We'll see with the Sixers and all that. And then the East has gotten better, even with Julius Randle's injury this year too. He was probably one of the most durable players, and now he's got 2 weeks. So 2 weeks from yesterday, he's going to be evaluated 2 days before the playoffs start.
Holy shit.
Oh, here's a fucked up stat. So this year, every single NBA All-Star has missed a game. Randall was the last of them. He was the only other All-Star this year who hadn't missed a single game.
Oh, you're right. 77 games played. Nobody's even close to him on that. Holy shit.
But that's the Thibodeau way, I think. I don't know if that injury was avoidable or not, but he loves playing his starters a heavy minutes.
So what was his injury?
A sprained ankle.
Ooh.
2 weeks. They're reevaluated. The thing with ankle injuries, as you're well aware of, they can, sometimes you get a couple weeks, you're fine, but one little tweak, and especially when it comes to the playoffs, I'm sure he'll be able to tape it up, and I know he's going to want to play, but if he comes back and he's not, he's maybe 80-90% of what Randall is, I don't think it's going to be enough to beat Cleveland right now, because Cleveland's got some great players on their team too, right? So, and they're going to need all they can to just have a good fight against those guys. And even if they would, if the Knicks do beat the Cleveland Cavaliers, their next matchup most likely is going to be Giannis, right? Yeah. And then it's going to probably be the Celtics or the 76ers, depending on what happens with the other games too, right? Yeah. So, and then if you go all the way to the finals, you got to beat another team in the finals. So,
definitely Bryce Young and CJ Stroud are definitely the top two. And then, I've been following kind of what the Seahawks have been doing. They've been obviously meeting with all these different quarterbacks. And then I just started kind of researching, watching tape on like each of these guys, just seeing their videos, the highlight reels. And Anthony Richardson, this guy is a beast. Like I was watching some of his footage and Will's footage. So these are two guys that I couldn't kind of figure out who would be that obviously one of those top three quarterbacks that are going to be taken.
Well, Levis has got a bit more experience as far as playing games, because Richardson only had 13 career starts, if I'm not mistaken. 13 career starts. So he only played 1 year last year. That was it. He's raw. First half of the year, he killed it. Second half of the year, team started to figure out that he's such a raw player that they limit his running game, and he's not the thrower, right? Mm-hmm. So whichever team does take him is going to need a situation where they're able to rest him. Yeah. Not rest him, sorry. Sit him down, let him learn behind a veteran QB. Yeah. And then maybe next year. But to me, he seems like the classic guy who goes from question in January, and by the time March and April comes around, everyone's debating if he's a number one pick overall or not. I don't think he is. Again, I don't watch as much tape of the college football during the season. I've got some friends who keep up with it, and they fill me in on some of the details. So I watch more of it in the off season than during the season. I think he's going to be a raw player. I'm not going to say he's a bust, because that's just not fair to him. Yeah. But NFL is really bad at getting quarterback situations right. Yeah. Like just horrible. So it could be bright. I mean, the year that Lamar Jackson got drafted, he got drafted like 32nd pick overall. Yeah. I believe Baker was the number one pick that year. Wow. I believe so that to me is something where NFL does not do a good job of picking him. I mean, the sixth guy, even that Herndon Hooker guy. Yeah. People are saying that he might be a franchise quarterback. I don't think all of them are going to be franchise quarterbacks. But if I was a team who is taking a shot on a guy like Will Levis or Richardson, I think you got to have him sit behind a veteran QB for a year, let him learn, and then you're able to or even, let him learn most of the season and then get the few games at the end of the year.
I think this is a really good rating system too, just looking at each of these quarterbacks and then seeing which areas they excel at. So you could already see, like you just brought up Hendon Hooker. So, he's a really good long pass guy. Medium and short passing is okay. And then again, the rushing and scrambling we've been seeing from a lot of these top quarterbacks has obviously gone way up. I think they're just trying to follow in the footsteps of some of the guys that are making it in the league and the guys that are obviously doing well in playoffs. We've seen Josh Allen, Mahomes, in the past, Russell Wilson when they won, just a lot of mobile quarterbacks other than a guy like you. Obviously, guys like Brady and who's before Brady. Well, for Broncos, Manning, those kind of guys, like they didn't need to have the rushing side. So there is always that side of you can have that beautiful mind of knowing all the plays and defenses and reading. I think reading the defense nowadays is one of the probably tougher things to do just because we've seen like LA, all these teams that try to do like such a weird system, San Francisco, where they just really mess with you on the defense and never let you know. Yeah. The preset motion, the only good quarterbacks will see that and notice even what a preset motion is going to look like or end up like. So they'll already be kind of prepared for it. Whereas some of these young guys that are going to come in, if you don't know sometimes those little preset motions and you do go for a run, you could get your ass stomped out basically that one play. And now you got this major leg injury or whatever kind of injury that could hinder you, as we've seen now with Lamar Jackson.
Well, and that's the thing with running style quarterbacks, right? Is that they tend to have more injuries just because they're running the ball. And even though some guys are really good at being able to avoid it, but there's always so many situations that happens when you're running the ball instead of just being able to throw from the pocket. But the way the NFL is now is that you've got to be able to buy yourself extra space and also avoid some of these hits that NFL quarterbacks are taking these days. Like these guys are, and if you've seen the NFL, you're without a quarterback, your team is pretty much going to be a shit team.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Right? And look at the Ravens when they did with and without Lamar. They go from then again, the Ravens did have a Pro Bowl QB in Huntley, so he's a game changer there with more interceptions and touchdowns. But you know what? For the most part, I think if you don't have a franchise quarterback, you're not going to be able to do well.
Yeah.
So true. We'll see. Teams are just saying, with quarterbacks and things like that in general, Lamar is probably going to be one guy that could factor into some of these quarterback plans that teams have, right? Yeah. Especially at the top. We'll see if teams like Indianapolis haven't fully, well, apparently they said that they're out on Lamar Jackson, but he's a guy who could influence the draft too if he ends up signing with them, right? They don't necessarily need to go with a quarterback with the 4th pick.
Yep.
Now it makes a team who's behind them, if they want to trade up, it gives Indianapolis a bit more leverage now too.
Yep. So true. All right, moving on just into our last little bit here for, we don't touch on the NHL as much just because our team isn't deep in the playoffs, so we haven't been following up as much. But
and just for the viewers, the many people that are watching this today, we are Canucks fans.
Yeah.
Painful Canucks fans.
And it sucks watching a team like the Bruins just dominating the NHL right now, back on top. Back to where, they were before.
Look at us and where they were and look at the different paths that we've taken since, man.
Yeah, and keeping still a similar, core of guys that they just wanted to hang on to. Shifting guys that, were big players, like Captain like Chara and all these guys, and knowing that they have to move guys before it's a little too late on some players. I think that's a big thing that some teams miss out on, holding a guy. It could just take literally that one extra year, maybe even that second year of holding on to that guy just a little too long, and now you've screwed up.
That's what Belichick was really good at, and then the Patriots, right? He'd always trade guys. People would be like, why are you trading this guy? He's so good. But you trade him a year early, you've got value, right? Yeah. And then that year that they had, it's an okay year. Maybe it's not a good year. Now you've got a huge contract.
Yeah.
Same thing with the Bruins and what they've been able to remake over the years is their contract structure is really good. It's not just about drafting guys. Yeah. It's also about being able to then sign them to contracts that are actually valuable for your team, right?
Yeah.
No offense to the team like the Maple Leafs, for example, but they're paying like $24 million between Marner and Matthews.
Yeah.
A team like the Bruins have 3 guys making $24 million. They're all elite players. You got and Marchand's making like $7 million. Pasternak finally got a raise after his initial rookie deal, and then Patrice Bergeron's killing it. He's still making his second year.
Still good. It's crazy.
So he's probably then a favorite for the Selke Award again this year, his to lose. But they're a team that I think, and the funny thing is that just speaking of Boston in general, that division is just crazy good right now. You're going to have Toronto and Tampa Bay playing each other in the first round. Winner's going to end up playing Boston.
God damn, right? And Maple Leafs is crazy because they've been doing so well these last couple of years, and we've seen in the playoffs how easily they get like something stuck in their head that they just can't, or in their ass. I don't know which way it is. But they just can't get over that hump anymore. And I was actually just reading an article about, I don't know if you heard that movie, The Love Guru, with Michael Myers. And he's like a guru that the Toronto. I didn't even know the storyline of it. The Toronto Maple Leafs bring in a guru to help them win a Stanley Cup. That's what the movie's baseline is, and the article had nothing to even do that with that. It was actually just one of the bodyguards from Vancouver was actually working on set, and he was supposed to be Michael Myers' bodyguard.
Yeah.
And they told him, hey, you know what? You're going to be Michael Myers' bodyguard. They're going to be shooting the Love Guru. And then we just have one ask of you. Do not look at Michael Myers in the eyes. And he's like, what the fuck do you mean? I'm a bodyguard. Like, I have to let him know, that I have my eyes on him or whatnot.
Right.
They're like, do not look at him. You'll be fired on the spot. So, first day, he's like, I'm waiting outside the trailer. It's Michael Myers' trailer. Somebody walks in. He's like, I can see a guy with super long hair. It kind of looks like a wig, a fake beard. He's like, to me, it looks like Michael Myers. But he's like, I got to kind of look at the guy, not just let any random in. So he's like, I kind of looked at him. We made eye contact.
Right.
I gave him a nod, and he went in. He's like, an hour later, I get a call, and they're like, you've been fired. Just because you looked at Michael Myers, and he didn't want you or anybody to look at him. And we had told you ahead of time that it won't affect you getting any more jobs to firing.
Damn.
It's just that that's part of his contracts, that if anybody's going to be working, you can't look at him in the eye. And then I saw at the bottom of it what the actual reason of this movie was. It was to hire a love guru to help the Toronto Maple Leafs win, and I didn't even go any past.
Did they win?
I didn't look at it if they won in the movie or not, because it was a flop movie, which they also kind of discussed in the article. But it was funny to hear that they had a movie set that they needed to bring in a love guru for the Toronto Maple Leafs to win a Stanley Cup.
Well, they're the perfect team if you're gonna have for a flop, right?
So
I mean, what,
have you
that's
been
7
following
years?
it all?
I'm just keeping up with some. I still take a look at the standings and stuff, but compared to say basketball or football, or even, I mean, it's crazy how much we talk about football. We haven't had a game in like 2 months, right? So
who would you right now predict to be in the Stanley Cup final, just by like kind of what you've seen and just stat wise overall right now, where everybody's at? Like
I would say Colorado versus, like, I'm going to take the easy choice here, but I'm going to go Colorado versus Boston. Ooh, I know. Ooh, really going off the book here.
Okay.
I'm choosing. I mean, Tampa's got the championship pedigree, so I can't call them out. I don't really know. Like, the one team that I think I have no idea how they're gonna do is the Edmonton Oilers.
Yeah.
So obviously, I've been keeping up with some of McDavid's numbers. Absolute, like, he's doing stuff that the guys used to do in the early '90s when it was such an open flowing game, right? So, but that team,
it's a wild card team right there.
Ooh, somebody's hurt in the Lakers game. Don't be wrong. Oh no, Daniel. But we'll see. I mean, the Oilers are such a their goaltending. Skinner's been great. I forgot who is the other Campbell. Campbell has not been as good.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see what happens with those guys, because I think like McDavid could single-handedly win a series.
Yeah.
Like, no problem. But when it comes to, I feel like the NHL playoffs, you need to have more than one guy. Because guys, like, the numbers that McDavid's putting up right now are like, he's averaging like somewhere around 1.5 to 2 points a game right now, which is absolutely unheard, like unreal numbers, right? So we'll see what happens when the playoffs come, because I think they just passed the Kings to go into second place in their
second place,
and with the wild card, so they're gonna have home. The crowd's gonna be rocking.
But Kings have a game on hand to get a chance to get back up there. If they'd win, they'd obviously.
I just don't know. Like, I don't, like I said, I don't follow enough hockey to know some of the same guys. But obviously, they've done well to this point, and they've got a really good roster. But they don't have a McDavid or a Draisaitl.
No,
they've got really good collection of players. They got our homeboy Alex Edler still playing. But other than that, they don't have a guy like McDavid who can single-handedly take over a series. Yeah. And sometimes in the playoffs, we saw it when the Canucks were good so many years ago. But sometimes you can win a series with one guy just carrying your team. Yeah. But can Edmonton win 4 rounds with just one guy? Because that gets really hard, putting that much focus and that much time on the ice for one guy throughout the season, right?
Yeah. So that's true.
I mean, I'm looking forward to it. I'm honestly probably going to be watching more NBA playoffs in NHL, to be honest. But
it'll be like
keep an eye and see what it'll fill in. There'll be days where maybe there's a blowout and I turn on one of the hockey games.
Yeah, third period, 5 minutes left. That's like the perfect time to tune in when it's a close game. But for me, I think Who I'd predict right now, definitely Boston in the Eastern Conference, just because of the domination, and the guys have just been staying healthy on that team. So I think they have a chance to make it that deep, and they have the experience. And I think Golden Knights, for some reason, I think this team's going to get back into that position again, just the way they've been playing these last little bit.
Well, Oilers just beat them like 7-4, 7-2 the other day, and McDavid ripped a patch, right? Yeah. So, I mean, I'm looking, that's what I'm saying. I think other than, and Colorado hasn't quite been the same. They've got some injuries. They lost some players, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Happens when your team is so good. So, I still don't think we've seen the best version of Colorado all year.
No.
And if they turn it up a little bit in the playoff time, they're going to be they have such a good defense. The goaltending's good. They have really good depth, on all three levels. And I think that's the one thing that, if you're going to say Edmonton, do they have that on all three levels? Is the defense, the offense, and the goaltending.
Yep.
So, all right, we'll see what happens.
So I think that's good for today's podcast, and we'll catch you guys next week and update you guys on what's going on in the sports world. And I hope you guys check out our golf episode playing over at Valley Golf Center. We're going to try to do that a little bit more, just kind of hit up different golf courses locally. And next time we're international again, we'll probably this time actually record some stuff. Probably just record about 3-4 different holes and give you guys an idea of what these courses are like, and put a little bit of a rating system on these courses so that people know what they're getting themselves into. All right, guys, we'll catch you later.
All right, see you guys next week. Enjoy your weekend.